again, I always feel like these steps happen a bit out of order or premature. I think there's only one direction where I can put a ton of effort, and I happen to have some help, so we're going to attack the back skids. Share your secrets with me. Come along with me. Join the ride with me. Teaching someone how to rivet made me realize just how far I've come myself in riveting, and how many freaking rivets I've put in this thing. It also made me realize that riveting isn't that hard if you have someone to show you. But that last part's my own fault. Chad was a good sport about the filming, and he was a quick learner at riveting, but he did have the best teacher I could think of. He was apprehensive about being the one holding the gun, and I had to explain that was actually the easier of the two parts. He didn't like the idea that he was on the outside where mistakes could be seen and wanted to be on the inside of the fuselage, but I think he was just trying to hide from the cameras. In all, we worked on the plane for just over 4 hours. I think about an hour of that was training, an hour of that was Chad getting the feel for things, and ultimately I think probably 2/3 of the rivets landed in the last hour. It's absolutely amazing how far the plane progressed in 4 hours. For one, it actually looks like a plane. The lines really come out. The scale of it comes out more than it has in a long time. In a way, it sort of reignited my excitement for the project. I will note that 2 hours spent wedged in the back of an RV-7 is about 1 hour and 59 minutes too much.
Set. Set. Good. Set. Set.
If nothing else, in a few short days, I have really managed to limit the access to the various parts of my plane. The skins are on, and it went fantastic. It took about 4 hours total. That includes rivet 101, bucking 101, and all of the other things that we had to do. I would say probably 75% of the rivets were set in the last hour and a half or 2 hours. And once I was in there, it was kind of just like, let's just sprint through this. And fantastic. I love how everything came out. I've spent far too long drooling over it. It's time to move on to the next thing. I still haven't made crucial decisions on my avionics panel yet. I will, I promise. And things are in the works, but there's nothing I can do on that right now, as much as that breaks my heart. So I am going to start inching my way towards the canopy, and with that, I believe starting to measure this thing out and getting it attached, as well as the cross member, center member, is going to be next. So I'm going to go read up on the plans and instructions and see what it takes to bolt this thing in. Wow. So the roll cage needs to be bent just a little bit, about 1/16 of an inch. So I'm going to strap it to the table and see if I can impart just a little bit of twist in the right direction and get it to sit flat. Absolutely no difference. Right as I was about to resign this whole boondoggle, I had one last idea to continue to clamp and screw this thing into place and twist on it. And I did so much that, in fact, I pulled a screw out of the table and a clamp went flying. And I felt a little defeated, but once I went and looked at it after all that, it's flat. I got just enough twist in there. I've placed it on the floor and it seems like I just nearly got it. It's flat. If there is anything left, and where I was going with this in my head mentally is that the screws and nuts and bolts that are going to lock this thing down in the cockpit are likely going to close any gaps I have to begin with. But I wanted to try and start with a straight piece, and like I said, I think we're there. I'm just trying to get an 1/8 of an inch or so but it hasn't moved a millimeter or a 64th since we're all imperial here. So here's the deal. Bouncing on this thing does not work. And I would argue that I'm probably heavier than your average builder, or at least that's what I'm told nearly weekly. I went ahead and got some straps. I'm going to try to just strap this thing together carefully, probably through several iterations of more and more pressure, until I can get this to squeeze together the mere 1/8 of an inch that I'm looking for. Tell that they're going to want to cruise up on this thing. Hopefully I can stop that. Okay. A little bit more. I don't think it's actually made any permanent change here. Still not. There's been no change. Zero change. Alright, I'm at my wit's end. I have strapped this thing with as much force as I possibly can with these straps, probably thousands of pounds, well above the rated limit, to the point where it's like scary and dangerous. I beat on it with a hammer. I have done everything, and I can't get it to budge, even 1/8 of an inch. It's just set where it's at, which is 42 3/8. And realistically, I want that to be closer to, I don't know, 42 1/4. I have strapped it in to where it's 38 3/8, so 3 or 4 inches of flex inward, and then beat it. I had 2 straps and some 2x4s and this medieval looking torture device where I again put it under all this force. It won't budge. Now here's the thing. In order to get that 1/8 or 3/16, I only need to exert about that much force. I mean, it's nothing. So why am I stressed about this when I can just bolt it under a little bit of tension? It will be a little more difficult because I'm either going to have to make all my measurements with this strap in place, or measure certain holes just a little bit out and then kind of flex it into place. But I'll tell you, it's certainly a heck of a lot easier than what I've been going through for the past couple hours. I'm going to try that. I really wish I would have saved myself the trouble. This is simple. It's not a lot of tension. It's barely enough just to squeeze it and get it where I want it. We should have no problem with the bolts holding it there for the lifetime of the plane. Everything else is spot on. These things are nearly exactly at the right angles they should be. They are exactly at the right angles. Both the feet are flush. Now, the only remaining annoyance that I have here, actually I got tons, I could go on and on, but one that I want to highlight is that the feet on this thing are actually too big. And I can either leave this sharp corner of steel hanging out, just jutting into the cockpit, or I can take an angle grinder to a powder coated finished piece of steel weldment in order to trim it to size per the plans. It's noted as optional. I think I'm going to risk doing some damage to this in order to take these off. I don't like the look of them. I don't want them hanging out in my cockpit. And then I'm just going to have to use some of this white primer to patch up the paint so that I don't have some fresh cut steel out there. A bummer. I wish that those would have come trimmed from the factory, but I have a lot of wishes. All in all, I think this is great. I got my holes marked. I will drill those in the cockpit supports here, and then I'm going to put this back on and transfer my marks up, and then we will drill into the steel weldment, and then I'll get to cutting on this thing, I guess. I got my marks on this. I had this clamped on the cockpit, which was a bit of an off-camera ordeal. But then I had to get inside and then drill up to mark here. The first mark, I didn't like where it wound up, and I'm glad I checked. It came a little too low to the front of this. And I just carefully repositioned and reclamped everything. And I got new marks. I love them. They're dead center. I've got edge distance. I believe the bolts will be accessible. I'm not going to interfere with anything. Now I just got to make them big enough. The hole is bound up absolutely perfect, and so I'm gonna take the win on that and call it a day on a good note finally. The forward holes here are pretty simple. I can get my hand in here and hold up the mounting tabs that the roll cage will utilize to clamp onto the longer on here. I can just get in there with my finger, hold it, mark it with the drill. There's a folded section of this sill that prevents me from doing the same on the aft holes. I have to get a little more creative with those. Alright, first of all, I gotta make sure to enunciate well, because I could really see how some mistranscribed audio would set my channel into a whole different genre as I talk about getting my finger here in this aft hole. As I mentioned, I can't hold the bracket up here like I could the other one because there's a flange that's in the way. I attached my bracket to a popsicle stick, but obviously I don't have the dexterity with this to ensure that this bracket is flat against both this side wall, the longer on, and the window canopy sill itself. I went ahead and hooked up my scope so that I can see in there, and hopefully I can fish it in there just right and for just long enough to get my drill and at least mark it. These suckers are hard to hold down and clamp down. But I think we got it. If you're wondering what this funky drill bit I keep using is, I like it because it has a stepped tip. And it goes up in probably 32nd inch or 16th inch increments. Now, the overall diameter of the bit is too large for either of these holes, but it does allow me to get really close to it without as much chance of this hole wandering on me. So it stays really centered. I'll get it just close enough and then I'll finish it off with the correct size bit. In this case, a number 12, in this case, 0.25 inch. These aft brackets are a total pain. I've spent hours mistakenly clamping various appendages and phalanges with hemostats, and it's been a nightmare. But I found a pretty elegant and simple solution. And so it's time for arts and crafts here. So I put a little masking tape on the bracket because the hot glue, which is what we're going to use here, tends to adhere better to that. I have a bolt purely for alignment here, and I'll get my entire rig set up about like that, and a squeeze of hot glue. Jam this popsicle stick. A little more on this side. We'll let it cool. Now I've got everything lined up and temporarily fastened to a stick. Let's see how this works. So with a video feed from inside the tunnel on my phone, I should be able to line this up Alright, there we are. Now the trick is, can I apply enough pressure to get it threaded? Stick's busted loose, but the bolt's on. Alright. Now he's got to fish a wrench in there, which it in itself is equally as challenging. So it's in, and it's good. It is aligned straight, it's centered, it's where it's supposed to be. I got the little things that bug me trimmed off really neat and clean, though I will touch them up with a little bit of white paint. I like it, but it's more than just a roll bar. It really is sort of the marking point of transitioning to the canopy and the frame and the slider, which is arguably one of the more frustrating parts of the build I've heard, and likely deserving of its own arbitrary number system on Ryan Flies and thumbnails created just for it. Now, I'm not going to do that. We're gonna just continue on considering this a piece of the cabin and the cockpit, considering I haven't even got the front portion done yet. But I will say it's likely months and months of work that is equally as frustrating as it was to get this on. And I'm not looking forward to that. In fact, I'm just kind of saying this to mentally prepare myself for the arduous task that is a sliding canopy on an RV. But if you're down to watch me cuss at this thing for the next several months, I would suggest subscribing and perhaps giving me a thumbs up, because I'm going to need some emotional support here and there. For now, I'm going to break on this one, and we will pick it up again shortly here. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching, for all the kind comments, for the likes and subscribes, and we'll catch you next time on Ryan Flies.